If you've ever found yourself spiraling down a late night rabbit hole of what am I meant to do and why haven't I found it yet? And let's be honest, who hasn't? Then you're in the right place. I'm Theresa White, career clarity expert and 5-time certified career coach, and I'm here to help you navigate the question of how to find a career that truly lights you up. On Career Clarity Unlocked, we're all about those light bulb moments. I'm talking to people who are still trying to figure out what they're meant to do, coaching them live to reach that magical, yes, this is it moment. And we'll also hear from those who've already found their dream careers and figure out exactly how they did it. Whether you're looking for inspiration or actionable advice on finding a career you love, I've got you covered. Time to unlock some career clarity. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Career Clarity Unlocked. I'm equally excited and nervous for this episode and what I'm about to share with you because it is about a personal experience I had just 2 days ago. And this episode is for all the women in the world who struggle to be assertive, who struggle to speak up, and who have a hard time setting boundaries. I'm one of them. So I want to start with what happened. 2 days ago, I was on a call with someone. It was a work-related call with someone who is in a helping position. I pay them to help me. And they spoke to me in a way that was absolutely unacceptable. We're not talking about a misunderstanding. I think they intended it as tough love, but it went way past tough love. It was disrespectful and plain and simple unacceptable. And what I realized after is that, why do I let someone talk to me like that? Why do I just sit there nicely and nod my head and not speak up and tell them like absolutely not okay? Instead of doing that, my response is always a mix of a freeze and fawn response. I freeze because I feel like I can't get away. And then there's functioning parts of me taking over who continue the conversation. I smile, I nod, I keep the peace while the rest of my body goes into a survival mode or freezes or disappears. After that call, I cried for 3 hours. My system was wrecked. It was an absolute mess that entire night. But the next morning I woke up and I had this lightning bolt moment where I was like, no, this is absolutely not okay. And I will not let anyone ever speak to me like that again. Again, that person wasn't even my boss. I don't report to them. I'm actually paying them. I'm not even in corporate anymore. I'm an entrepreneur. But even given all those circumstances, I had this trauma response, that freeze-fawn response in that moment, instead of being assertive, instead of speaking up. And it's a part of me that keeps the peace at all costs that took over in that moment. And that really made me dig deep and figure out where does this peace come from? And why do I respond in these ways? So today in this episode, we're going to unpack why so many women like me struggle to speak up, specifically at work, and why we freeze or fawn instead of saying, no, excuse me, but that is not okay. And also why this is not about being too nice or not confident enough, but about this being a much deeper, adaptive, and actually brilliant survival pattern. And I'm going to share with you more stories about my past job experience where I stayed silent when I shouldn't have. And then we'll unpack the roots of the struggle. We're going to go deep, starting in the childhood dynamics, all the way to current workplace reenactments. And I hope that you will walk away from this episode with a trauma-informed, shame-free roadmap to start reclaiming your voice at work. If you are new here, welcome to Career Clarity Unlocked. I am Theresa White, career clarity expert, 5-time certified career coach, and the only coach who guarantees you career clarity in just 30 days. Since 2020, I've helped over 600 amazing women leave unfulfilling jobs and step into meaningful, energizing work aligned with who they are. So Let's dive in. And we're going to start by rewinding back to my corporate days to show you this pattern. And I'm so curious to hear from all of you listening in here. Is this something that you've ever experienced? Have you ever been in a situation like this or completely different where someone spoke to you in a way or treated you in a way that was not okay? But instead of asserting yourself, you froze or fawned and stayed small. So let's start with when that happened in my past. And the first example I'm going to share with you is 15 years ago. It was in a parking garage. In the first month on my new job. This was my first job out of college. I was brand new, not even a month into this role, barely had any idea of what I was doing, when my manager cornered me in a dimly lit hallway of a parking garage and started yelling at me over our poor customer service scores. And despite that being absolutely inappropriate, also, these scores are measured on a 3-month basis. So someone who started not even a month ago has very little impact on these scores. But instead of standing up and be like, absolutely no, this is not okay, I just stayed quiet, was like, oh my God, of course I'm scared. I'm young, I'm new in the role. I absorbed his anger. I didn't defend myself. And I didn't point out the very obvious unfairness. So I just was standing there like, yeah, I'll do better. And it still bothers me when I think back to that moment of how does someone treat someone like that, a new employee that was vulnerable, blaming them for something they didn't cause. And when I look back at myself, I wish I would have stood up for myself and not defaulted to appeasing. But in that moment, obviously my system prioritized survival over fairness, and I didn't argue with my new manager. Another example, and this is about 12 years ago, when I was calling in sick to work. Now, that was not a pattern of mine. I could swear that in my time in corporate, I probably called in sick less than 5 times over the years. This might have been my first or second time ever calling in sick. But that morning I woke up and I was really dizzy. I had no idea why I woke up feeling so dizzy. I wasn't out partying or anything. I had just worked the evening before, got to bed, woke up, and the world was spinning around me. And I was nauseous, and there was no way I would have able to drive to work safely. And I knew that was not an option. I needed to go see a doctor. When I called my manager to let him know, instead of any concern or maybe empathy, he started yelling at me. And he was demanding that I come in or I have to find someone who covers my shift. I was one out of 4 assistant branch managers. So there were only 3 people who could have possibly covered for me. And I had then reached out to all 3 of them. All 3 said like, so sorry, I wish I could help you, but I can't. And my manager was like, well, too bad, so sad, then you have to come in. And I was so desperate, I called the area manager, left her a voicemail of like, I don't know what to do, but I don't feel safe driving. I need to go see a doctor. I have to come in. I don't know what to do. She never replied to my voicemail. My manager then forced one of the other assistant managers to come in, made me feel super guilty because that assistant manager missed an important event with their kids because of that. And for a long time, I was ashamed, made to feel guilty, like I did something terribly wrong that day. And again, this shows the non-assertive pattern that spans throughout my life. I was legitimately sick. And instead of protecting my boundary, I was okay with being yelled at, shamed, being made to feel guilty without seriously pushing back. And in the end, I carried not just the fear of being physically unsafe, of feeling so dizzy, but I was also told I'm the problem because I was the one who called in sick. So that is the second memory that really stands out in my in my brain about times when I wish I would have stood up for myself more. The third example I'm going to share with you, and please don't make me feel like I'm the only one. Send all of your crazy workplace experiences my way. I want to hear from you. I hear so much from my clients. By now I could probably write a book. Send yours over, so maybe I will write a book one day about the things we tolerate at work that we should never, ever have to tolerate. So, third story about my pay plan. And this goes back 8 years ago. I was in recruiting, commission-based recruiting position, and I was killing it. I had a pay plan where my commission was based on a target that I had of how many people I'm expected to hire. I hired more than double that. Managers loved me because they were finally not understaffed anymore. Corporate, not so much, because I made way too much money. And at the end of the year, my manager sat down with me and was like, Theresa, thank you so much for what you're doing. You worked so hard. You're going to get a 3% pay increase. But we also doubled your sales target. And in that moment, I couldn't calculate fast enough. I was like, okay. After she left, I calculated it out. And I'm like, wait, I'm making $1,000 less per paycheck because my sales targets were doubled. So even with a 3% pay increase, that cuts $1,000 per paycheck. That's a huge pay cut. So I talked to my manager and explained like, hey, I feel like this is not fair because I'm losing a significant amount of money from each paycheck as a reward for working super hard over the last year. That doesn't seem right. So my manager actually got really upset that I would keep referring to it as a pay cut. And she and her boss came down to see me in my office. And her boss started yelling at me and saying how lucky am I to report to my direct manager, because if I would be reporting directly to her, I would now be terminated for insubordination. Now in that meeting, I froze. Typical freeze fawn response. I just sat there and nodded, said absolutely nothing, and was just okay. And it's insane. Like, my system knew what was happening was not right. I hadn't done anything wrong. If anything, I just worked my butt off and outperformed what was expected of me. And in return, being yelled at for calling out what it was, a pay cut, was wrong. But by her yelling at me and making me feel this small, of course I didn't feel safe to push back. So again, I froze, I fawned, nodded my head, and did nothing. And there's so many more examples I could share with you over the years, from work examples to personal examples. But this really hit me hard when the same thing happened again 2 days ago, where someone talked to me in a way that I should have never let anyone talk to me. And I do not defend myself. I just sit there quietly, freeze, fawn, and do nothing. So when I woke up that next morning, as I had shared earlier, I was like, no, I will not ever let anyone speak to me that way. And first, I was hard on myself. I was like, why are there some people who can just be so assertive and so confident and they don't struggle with this? And why am I not like them? What's wrong with me? But what I realized is that people who tend to be more assertive or have an easier time setting boundaries, they grew up with practice boundaries. For them, saying no wasn't scary. It was allowed. And they learned early that safety doesn't disappear when they speak up. And they generally felt confident that if things went wrong, someone would have their back. And they were not as much conditioned to people please. They had much less pressure to obey and more freedom to push back. And today, when they say, no, this is not okay, that isn't just their confidence showing, but it's really a muscle memory from safety and support that built throughout their childhood and entire life. Versus us, less assertive women, we often learn to survive by appeasing, being agreeable, keeping the peace. Maybe our boundaries weren't respected. They were either punished or ignored. Maybe we grew up where saying no felt like a threat to connection, losing safety, losing belonging. So we learned not to say no. And these patterns are not weaknesses. They are really brilliant. Because when we're children, we're dependent on our caregiver. Our life depends on them. We are not able to survive without them. Our life depends on the connection to our caregiver. So our brilliant mind learns to keep us safe. Safety equals being accepted and in connection with our caregiver. And our brilliant mind learns like, okay, if we just keep the peace, if we're agreeable, don't set boundaries, don't say no, we're going to be safe. So our brilliant brain learns, this is what I'm going to do to keep myself safe. And our system got really smart by realizing that if staying quiet keeps us safe, that's what we're gonna do. Now, when you imagine a child, and I also want to be very clear, this is not about shaming parents. I do truly believe that most of our parents did the best they could with the tools and resources and knowledge they had at the time. But if you imagine a child that grows up as a caregiver who is unpredictable, maybe critical or dismissive, it's easy to see how this child learns that being compliant is safer than resisting. And our nervous system in our brain encodes pushing back equals danger, being compliant equals survival. And that's the pattern we're going to operate from. And on the other hand, if you imagine a child whose boundaries are consistently respected, they're allowed to say no, their emotions are being validated, they have internalized that their needs are legitimate. And they were not shamed or punished for asserting themselves. But if kids were punished or shamed for asserting themselves, they learn the opposite, and they learn that self-protection invites harm. And then on top of that, we're adding to that the gender norms. Because oftentimes girls are more explicitly or implicitly rewarded for being nice, accommodating, or self-sacrificing, while boys are often more encouraged to be assertive or even confrontational. And that conditioning doesn't disappear when you get a paycheck or start work. It just shows up in the conference rooms. And then on top of that, women of color, LGBTQ, or women with disabilities face even harder consequences for asserting themselves, reinforcing they have to be even more cautious. And to explain a little bit more why this fawn or freeze response here, if you're not familiar with this, besides the most common trauma responses, which are fight, flight, freeze, there's also fawn, which is a trauma response where you people please to reduce a threat. And if this is how you kept caregivers regulated or kept yourself safe and in connection to your caregivers, that becomes automatic. It becomes a reflex, no matter who you interact with, even if those are not your parents anymore, and even if your life doesn't depend on them anymore. And really, it's not irrational to respond that way. It's the wiring of our brain that moves our responses much faster than our conscious thought. And as you can see, it automatically happened to me 2 days ago. But then the next day, when I was able to have some distance and think about it, I was like, oh my God, I should have responded differently. But what happened was my automatic ingrained response, the way it was wired in my brain. And what I want you to really take away here is that people who are more assertive, they are not stronger. And people who are less assertive are not weaker. It's not a difference of strong and weak, but it is a difference of practice safety versus learned survival. Because we didn't choose this. I wasn't like, oh, please let me be the not assertive, non-boundary person on this planet Earth, please. No, we adapted to what we had to adapt to. And that adaptation saved us. And as a less assertive women, we are, again, not weaker, but we carry survival strategies that were forged in harsher environments. But the beautiful thing is we can rewire our brain. We can change those strategies. And it is not about becoming someone else. It is about reclaiming our right to safety and respect that we never got to practice as children. Now, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to worry about this because every workplace would feel safe. Managers would give feedback with respect. Leaders would understand that people do their best when they feel supported and not when they're ashamed or scared. Colleagues would speak to each other with kindness even when they disagree. That would be ideal, that would be perfect, but unfortunately that's not the world we live in. Especially in corporate America, there are so many people who see kindness, compliance, or gentleness as weakness. And they sense when someone struggles to set boundaries, and instead of respecting that, they lean on it, reinforcing those patterns that we already struggled growing up with. Ways I've seen this show up for people is 1, the bully boss. Yeah, that was my parking garage boss. They raise their voice, use cutting sarcasm, or talk over you because they know that you are not going to be pushing back. The manager who cut my pay plan. Yes, bully boss. The manager yelling me in the parking garage. Yes. The person I talked to 2 days ago. Yes. Then there's also the credit stealer, that they repeat your ideas as their own because they sense that you won't fight them on it. Then we have the boundary testers who are just keep piling on work on you, ignoring your workload because they know you'll just say yes. And then last but not least, we have the manipulator. They wrap disrespect in the language of just being direct or tough love, making you second guess whether you're overreacting. And I've experienced all of those, especially the bully boss and the manipulator. And these people really take advantage when they're in an environment that doesn't enforce respect. And obviously, it's the most vulnerable employees that suffer the consequences. And they don't pick on the vulnerable employees because they're weak. No, we already covered it. They're not weak, but because these people are opportunistic. Some people have learned, I don't know if that's consciously or not, that they can get away with more when others stay quiet. And they mistake your survival strategies for permission to be mean or treat you in a way that you don't deserve to be treated. But that is on them. That is truly their lack of integrity, their abuse of power, and their failure to lead with basic humanity. It shouldn't be that way. And the thing that really sucks is for women who already grew up with shaky safety, this is a really cruel trap. Because we grow up with the exact survival strategies that we needed to survive as children. And those exact strategies now make us a vulnerable target to be exploited or be treated the way we shouldn't be treated in the workplace. And unfortunately, that can even be re-traumatizing. It can reinforce that the lie that standing up isn't safe, and it makes the uphill climb feel even steeper. And I really hope that this will help you drop some of the shame or some of these shoulds that you might be feeling, because you're not the problem. You're not the problem whatsoever here. The people who abuse their power, they are a problem. Workplaces that tolerate disrespect, they are a problem. A workplace culture that rewards aggression over compassion is a problem. And the biggest problems are leaders who choose their authority to harm others instead of support others. So now that we took all of this apart, and the biggest piece I want to keep emphasizing is, again, it's not strong versus weak. It's not that you're not as good as they are. It is practice safety versus learn survival. We're not starting from an equal point in life. None of us do. And the more practiced safety you have, the more confident, the more you can be assertive, the more you can set boundaries. The more you have to learn how to survive, the harder all of this is. But as I already said, thankfully, we can change. We're not set in stone. There's so much room for us to grow. And this is the work that I've been doing so much over these last years that has gotten me to this point today where, yes, in the moment, I can still default to my freeze fawn response, but at the same time, I can now also set boundaries and be assertive when I need to be. Sometimes it takes me a day or two to get there. So the first step that I recommend if you want to grow in this area is to stop fighting with yourself and naming where you're at without shame. And it helps to write these things down. It could be something like, yes, I struggle to set boundaries because my body learned that staying quiet was safer. That's not a weakness, that was survival. And when we get scared, instead of being so hard on ourselves, we can say to ourselves, I get it that you're scared. You're doing something new. Let's go slow. And that step alone can really help us calm the war inside of us, that negative self-talk we so often have. The second step is to learn how to ground and build a sense of safety in our body. Because we cannot set boundaries if our nervous system is in panic mode, if we're in that fight or flight response. So now looking back at what happened to me 2 days ago, if this happens again, I know now that the first thing I'll do is to take a grounding breath. This can be really simple. Inhale for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6. Repeat this a couple of times. Or some people like to do an orienting scan where you look around the room and name 5 things. Or what works really well in meetings is to press your palms together under the table to remind your body of your strength. Good to practice those when you're not in these situations so that they become second nature. So when you get into a situation where you are usually triggered, the first thing to do is to do something that grounds your body. To recognize those situations, it's also important to identify your non-negotiables. Because setting boundaries or being assertive or speaking up, it's not about saying no to everything. It's just about protecting what matters most to us. And I encourage you to start with writing down a few things that you will not tolerate anymore. My list definitely includes being spoken to in a raised or demeaning tone. Maybe yours include having your work taken without giving you credit. Maybe it includes being expected to answer emails after hours. Think about what are your non-negotiables. And those, once you're really clear and you need to write them down, they can then become your anchor points. So when you recognize one of your non-negotiables happening in real time, you know this happens, I need to ground myself, take a breath before I respond. And start with the easiest ones, whatever feels the most attainable for you. And for those, then have a go-to sentence. Because in that moment, 2 days ago, my mind was blank. I didn't know. I had this feeling like, this does absolutely feel not right. I don't feel safe. This is terrorizing me right now. But my mind didn't come up as anything I could say or how I could get out of it. So it helps so much to have simple pre-written scripts. And this can be, for example, I'm willing to discuss this, but I won't continue while being spoken to like that. Or I hear your feedback and I'd like to finish my thought before responding. Or I don't have the bandwidth to take that on right now. So pick your non-negotiables and then for each write a sentence down and practice that sentence so that it's so second nature that when you're in that situation, you can spit out that sentence. It's already there. And as I said, start with the lower stakes boundaries. Maybe don't start with this big mean boss. Start with ways where you can set boundaries that teach your system that saying no can feel safe. One I just recently learned is sending back your wrong coffee order. I was at a cafe with a friend and I I don't drink coffee. I drink chai tea latte, or sometimes I drink decaf, but I can't handle caffeine. And I got a caffeinated coffee, and she's like, tell them. My friend is very assertive. And I was like, no, it's fine. I'll just have a sip and don't finish it. She's like, no, go and tell them now. I'm like, no, don't worry about it. I'll be okay. So she got up and told them. And I was like, okay, lesson learned. Next time, I will speak up for myself. Another small boundary you can start testing is telling a friend like, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm too tired to hang out tonight. Just saying no to social engagements. This is something I've really built muscle memory over the last couple of years. Whereas before, my people-pleasing part would always jump in and say, yeah, of course. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't have the energy to go there, but I have to. Now I can confidently say, I'd love to spend time with you, but tomorrow I won't have the energy to do so. So starting with these small reps builds confidence that, yes, I can safely say no without any significant negative consequences. And that muscle memory then builds so you can do it in bigger moments as well. And it's beautiful if you can use these little wins and build a record of your wins. Because your brain will always try to convince you that you're failing. And when it does that, you can fight back with evidence. You can have like a boundary log where you write down every time you spoke up, no matter how small it is, even if it's with your children. You set a boundary. You were assertive with a neighbor, with a friend, but keep a log of the times that you successfully did that. Note what you said, how it felt, and what happened afterwards. And then when you get really scared of like, oh, I don't know if I can push back on this, or should I say something? Read the list when that thought creeps in. And it's your proof that you can do this and that you are changing and growing. And for me, one of the key strategies on growing in this area is not doing this alone. I have an amazing therapist that I'm beyond grateful for, who has helped me to get to where I am today. And 4 years ago to today, I've been in therapy for 4 years with her. It's been night and day. I don't think anyone would have thought that I could grow this much in 4 years. So whoever feels safe to you as a support system, don't be afraid to lean on them. Maybe it is a trusted colleague who can back you up in meetings. Maybe it's a friend or a mentor. Maybe it is a therapist. Maybe it is a career coach. But when you have support and you're not in this alone, it makes it so much safer and steadier. I don't think without support, I would have been able to get to where I am today. And then I also want to give you strategies for when you set a boundary. From my own experience, I can tell you, people won't be used to you setting boundaries or saying no or asserting yourself. They're like, wait, what? She always says yes. What? No. And they're going to push back. Doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. And the best method to use is the broken record method. Calmly repeat your boundary without over-explaining yourself. Something like, I understand you're upset, but I won't continue while being spoken to that way. You can say, yes, I hear you, but I won't continue while being spoken to this way. Whatever the boundary is, instead of going into a defensive place and over-explaining it, simply calmly restate the boundary as many times as you need to. And that repetition then signals that you're actually serious without escalating it. Also notice if at work someone repeatedly keeps crossing a line that you drew. Also be aware that it's not just a boundary issue at that point, but actually a workplace issue. My recommendation for that is to always document, even if it's just for yourself, what happened. The date, time, what was said, and the impact that had. And once you have this written track record, find someone who is safe to share that with. It might be HR, if you have a great HR department and they are there for the employees and support employees, go to your HR department and share that with them. If you cannot trust your HR department, which I know unfortunately is the case in some organizations, is there someone else that is safe that you can trust? a mentor, a colleague, someone in a different department, so that you have some support as you take your next steps. And always remember that setting boundaries is like building muscles. And it's hard. It's as hard as going to the gym, or maybe even harder. It takes work and practice and a concerted effort. But the more you use them, the stronger they get. But along the way, please be gentle with yourself. Don't get hard on yourself. I could have beaten myself up about my reaction 2 days ago. But it's okay. Some days you'll nail it, other days you'll freeze or stay quiet. That's okay. Every attempt counts. And even if we learn something afterwards and now know next time this happens, I will be reacting differently. That is a big step forward. And the goal is that one day, without even realizing it, you'll hear yourself saying, nope, this is not okay. I will not let anyone speak to me like that again. And you'll mean it. And while I didn't do this in my conversation this week, I had moments over the last year where I heard myself saying that. I didn't have to think twice. I didn't have almost an anxiety or panic attack before saying it. I just was sitting there and said, no, this is not okay. No. And I'm so proud of myself for being able to do this now. It was unimaginable 4 years ago. So I won't always get it right. But every time I get it right, it's a huge milestone and something to be truly proud of. Here's what I want you to remember from this episode. 1, if you struggle to speak up at work or in your life, it's not a flaw. It's a survival strategy. This is not a matter of strong versus weak, but it is a matter of practice safety versus learned survival. People who are more assertive, they aren't stronger, but they were trained in safety and had their boundaries reinforced early on. Women like me who are less assertive, we're not weaker, but we are carrying survival strategies forged in harsher environments. And both of those are products of adaptation, not of our innate worth. And the takeaway here is you are not weak. You are brilliantly adaptive. And the good news is that assertiveness and setting boundaries are learned skills. It's not something we're born with or lacking. And our system isn't broken or wrong in any way. We just need safety and practice, and we can also speak up, be assertive, and set boundaries. If any of this resonates with you, I'd absolutely love to connect with you over a call. You can book a free consultation call with me, and I will work with you to gain career clarity in a record time so that you can stop tolerating environments that aren't any that you should be having to tolerate in the first place and start creating a work life that actually feels aligned and yours. Thank you so much for being here and joining me in listening into this episode and listening to all of it, the hard, tender, vulnerable parts inside this episode. You're doing the work. You're already doing it. And this is something to be proud of. Keep up doing the work. It is in your hands. We're all able to change, grow, adapt. And it is truly possible for you to stand up for what you deserve, to go after what you desire, and actually find a career that makes you come alive. I'd absolutely love to help you do this. So please reach out if you'd like personalized support and subscribe to the Career Clarity Unlocked podcast. I will see you back here next week. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Career Clarity Unlocked. If you're feeling stuck in that what's next spiral and are ready to finally break free, let's chat. You can book your free Career Clarity call where we'll uncover what's really important to you, tackle any obstacles holding you back, and map out your best next step. Schedule your free 30-minute call today on careerbloomcoaching.com. And before you head out, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you never miss an episode. If today's conversation gave you new insights and inspiration, please leave a review. It really helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend or on social media. Your support truly means the world. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time.